Welcome back after the tea. This session is going to be about CSS3 and presentation. This was a session that was done by Shwetang in the Bangalore edition, and I'm just trying to fill in his shoes. A little bit about me. I know that you all know that I am that single guy who's standing between you and lunch. 1:30 is lunch, and yeah, there's my session squeezed in the middle. Now, frankly, don't blame me for that. I am not responsible. The folks here, they are the ones who... So, yeah, okay, so I'm that guy standing between you and your lunch. But apart from that, I work for companies like Trilogy, RSA Security. I have consulted for a lot of startups to help them build their HTML websites. I'm primarily a UI guy. And right now, I'm a program manager at this internet company called Microsoft. And I'm there helping to build the indexed DB local storage specifications. So I'm involved with IndexedDB, and that's how I got involved into HTML5. And I think this is some cool technology to work around with, play around with, and things like that. So let's get started. Someone once told me you have to start a presentation with a joke. Let me try that. Why did the hot girl at the bar ignore a HTML page? Because it's just a HTML page. There's no CSS in it, so it doesn't have a style. Okay, it's a PJ, fine, but there you go. That's the joke I could come up with. Thank you. Well, we're talking about style. Let's talk about this. How many people in this room are web designers? Wow, that's quite a bit. How many of them are web developers? That's a good match. So, is this session for designers or developers? Well, it's for both. And there's not much of a difference, though there are like these two cool-looking dudes here, and there's actually more information below the fold, more controversial information here. But yeah, it says that the common thing that both of them fear are women, but yeah, that's controversial, so let's keep it there. So this session, the intent of this session is for both. People who write code are the people who write CSS. They want their web pages to look good. They want their web pages to look like what the designers wanted it to be. Why is it for the designers? Well, it is for the designers because they tell you how the web page should look like. And this is my attempt to satisfy both of them. The cool-looking dude there with blonde hair and the half-shaven beard guy who's the developer, a typical persona. Yeah, so CSS is awesome. How many agree? Great. And how many know that this awesomeness sometimes goes beyond the box and you spend hours trying to fill it in? Great. We all know that writing CSS is hard. Writing good CSS especially is very, very hard. Why is that? Well, you have floats, you have display, you have different layout models. There are certain browsers that include padding. There are certain browsers that do not include padding in the width. Which browser is that? IE. Okay. Yeah, so yes, there are browsers that do all sorts of things like this just for one simple reason, that it's not clearly mentioned in the specification. So, okay, so... Maybe your boss is here? No, I speak for the free community. So... Yeah, a disclaimer, I am not representing my company here. All views expressed here are mine and mine only. Are your company names start with M1 and Okay, so why is CSS so awesome? It adds style to the page, but what are we going to be talking here? We're going to be talking about a bunch of things, but a quick clarification. This is a HTML5 conference. It says doc type HTML5. So what is a CSS3 guy doing in here anyway? I mean, CSS3 is not a part of HTML5. Yet, I think these are some things that every HTML5 website seems to assume that should be a capability of the browser. Every HTML5 website that you write assumes that if you have these things, they are good. And that's why CSS3 is loosely part of HTML5. Technically, no, but loosely, yes. Sorry. Like the other presentations, this again is based on the same doc type HTML5 rocks presentation by Google. And yes, it looks good on IE also. So let me open it up on IE9. And you pretty much see the same look and feel here. So, talking about cross-browser, just one more quick question before we move on to the real crux of the material. Warning here, the material that comes after this is going to be heavily based on code. There's going to be a lot of code. So if you're comfortable with it, great. If you're not, please do learn code. So yeah, how many of you here think that your website should look the same in all browsers. Whoa, you guys are all wrong. Do you really believe or do you really think that your website can ever look the same in all browsers? It looks similar, awesome. There was some comment there? Designers, do you have anything to counter that? There was one more comment. Let's quickly go through these because there's also a bunch of comments to complete. And I know the statement I've made is very controversial. There's a difference between similar and same. Similar is good. Same is creepy. Imagine same looking people all over the place. Imagine me standing here and every single person here has the same face. It's creepy, right? Yeah. Yeah, the Endiran effect. That's kind of creepy. So the statement that I'm trying to make here is your websites should look same, but similar is an overkill. Do you agree? Yeah, it should look it should look similar, but it should not look the same. Is that fine? Yeah, so with that, let's continue. Every browser has its differences. Let's respect individuality. The first part here is rounded corners. Personally, if you ask me why does CSS3 why does CSS3 exist? This is the one single reason. Rounded corner, FTW. No one really cares. All you want is rounded corners. I know. One question to the designers out there. I'm not a designer. I am not great at aesthetics. But what's with the rounded corners? Why do designers like rounded corners so much? Yeah, it's the new in thing. Yeah, okay, in thing. What else? Any logical explanation?
It's an evolution of human mind.
Because most designers are women, curves, woman. Fine. No, okay, he said that statement and says he doesn't mean it. So, yeah, there. Well, anyway, nonetheless, it's all about rounded corners and developers have had enough. 4 divs at the top, 4 background images for rounded corners. Think enough is enough. Let's use the CSS3 rounded corners properties. It's very simple to use. You use the border-radius property, and with it also the vendor prefixes of -mos, -webkit, -o. The reason you have to use these vendor prefixes, at least for now, is that Firefox 3.5 doesn't support it yet. Firefox 4 will, Firefox 3.5 doesn't. Similarly with older versions of Chrome. So to be on the safer side, use all the 3 variations, and as your website moves forward, as people hopefully upgrade their browsers, you just need that single border-radius : the radius. How easy is it to use? It's actually very simple. This is a box that you see. I can set the individual border radiuses, and the box is a smooth, womanish box, in your words. Any questions on the border radius? Zoom in, give me a minute. Let me see if this works. Better? So all it says is border radius, top left, top right, bottom right, bottom left. That's pretty much it. And you can also use border radius - top left, individual properties. So this is the simplest way to achieve border radius. I started with the simple stuff. Let's get on to something more interesting. Fonts. As a web developer till today, how many fonts have you used on a website? More than 5. Why would you use more than 5 fonts on one website? Okay, he loves fonts. Fine, awesome. But generally, how many fonts do you generally use on a website? Okay, how many fonts are there on the doctype HTML5 website? Did you know that there's a custom font on the doctype HTML5 website? And that was one reason the registration was not working today. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we all tend to do things like this. But yes, though we use very limited number of fonts, every single web designer has a very strong opinion on what fonts should be used. Did you also know that fonts was a concept that was introduced in the operating systems by Steve Jobs, just because he took that class about typography? So It was there in the desktop. Why not bring it to the websites? Well, that's where the @font face comes in. It's very simple to use. You have to declare a font, which is this part here. You just say what is the name of the font and what is the URL, and then set the style here. And that's pretty much it. For an example, I say this, and look at the font here. This is still selectable text. The font has changed because I've specified a specific URL and said that the browser has to go to that location, download the font, and use it to render here. Now there are two questions, or two gotchas here. First, Firefox does not let you pick up fonts from cross-domain. There have been a lot of debates about, so all the designers here would know that fonts are subject to DRM and copyrights, and people are very, very picky about the licensing of fonts. Am I right? So that's where, that's a problem that's still not solved. But the browser vendor said, let's just go ahead with it and let's put in all the fonts that we have. So this font support was already there in IE for a very long time, since IE 6, I guess. It's called the EOT fonts. But apart from that, the browsers today support TTF. TTF is TrueType font. So those are the fonts listed there. So the different formats supported are EOT, EOF, WOFF, OpenType, and TrueType. And the specification of the WOFF, the Web Open Font Format, that's where people are trying to resolve the problem of licenses and stuff like that. So yes, starting today, you can start writing you can start using web fonts. The only gotcha there is that the entire TTF file will be downloaded. It will be downloaded just like an image. It will have the same download or cache characteristics as your image. So that was about fonts. And fonts can also, so the URIs there need not be HTTP URIs. They can also be data : // does anyone know what a data URI is? I think I heard an answer there. Ravi, I'm sorry, I'll have to keep.
Somebody said embedded data here.
Yes.
Who said that? Yes.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Yeah, so you can basically put the data embedded into the file itself, so it doesn't have to be downloaded.
True. So, just like with images, you can also use the embedded. You can use the data URIs. What it does is you pick up the entire TTF file, base64 encoded, and paste it inside your CSS file. So the CSS file will be really long, but there will be no extra HTTP requests. So when does this? When will this really work? To give you a classic case, I wrote an experiment on using the rupee symbol in websites already. How do you do that? The new R symbol that you have, all you do is just embed that into your CSS. So without having to download an entire font, just embed that single part, and your websites can start using the R symbol as if it was selectable text. So that's one classic case of using fonts with data URIs. Any questions on fonts? Guys, don't make this look this simple. I mean, it's kind of hard concept. So any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Yeah, there's one. Yeah, so there's a big list of what format is supported. There's a big list, comma, war, comma, misunderstanding about which list is supported by what. The safest is to go with TTF, which is TrueType, because IE supports it, Chrome supports it.
IE will not take TTF.
Okay, inside information, right
Since
now
when?
it doesn't, but it soon will.
All right.
So IE6 exists, and it exists for a reason. It exists so that you can write your pages in a way that is progressively enhanced. I'll talk about progressive enhancement later, but yes, there are cases where fonts will not be supported, and I'll tell you how to go around with how to work around that and make your website still look good. It's all about CDN and caching. So I am not aware of. So I do not represent Microsoft. I am not aware of whether Microsoft is coming up with a CDN like that or not. I know it has one for jQuery. Harish may be able to answer this better. The question was, just like Microsoft caches jQuery on its CDN, ajax.microsoft.com, will it also cache? Google has a directory, so will Microsoft also have a cache directory of all these fonts? So yes, this was a demo of using different fonts, and I think the internet is not there, so these fonts may not come up. But every time you see here, it downloads the entire font, and that's okay. That's fine. I think I don't want to disrupt the presentation. So if you notice, the text there doesn't show up. Reason being, it's trying to download the entire font from the internet. And this is what would happen if you try to hit a non-existent font. Okay, animations and transitions. How many of you here love jQuery animations? Awesome. How many of you hate to write code for that? Okay, so you guys like something and you don't want to work for it. Rocks. So that's where CSS3 comes and helps you. So typically very small things like menu highlighting. I mean, you don't want to go ahead and write tons of code, or like you don't want to write $, fade in, fade out, etc. It's like painful. This is supposed to be presentation, so why not just put it all in CSS? And that's where the animations or transitions come in. Writing transitions is very simple. So this is a div. This blue thing that you see is a div. What I've done here is I've set what its background color should be. And these are the very two important properties. Well, as always, please do precede them with the browser-specific vendor prefixes like -mos or -webkit. But the crux is, you say that you want to transition the property called background color, and you want to transition it for a duration of 3 seconds. How do you activate this? You can activate it by applying a class to it. In this case, I'm applying the hover class, and this is the great animation that I could come up with. Thank you. Yeah, so it's not limited to background colors. It can be moving around stuff, things like that. You may get a feeling that why is this guy talking about animation moving? Is he moving us back to 1999 when you had a web page with blinking stuff and Marquee and all that? No, that's not my intent. My intent here is certain animations like this could help menu elements, could help better feedback when you hover over stuff or when you move around stuff. All this is done without having to write code. It's all in CSS is code, but it's declarative. So you just write it in CSS and your work is done. Any questions on transitions or animation? CSS gradients. How many of you here love that single 1 pixel image that you repeat over and over in the page, so that just because you have a gradient? Do you use gradients in your web pages? How do you usually put gradients on your web pages? What was that?
Repeat -x and repeat -y so that it will.
Okay, so all you give the browser is 1 pixel of data and you want it to repeat.
Yes.
You're making the browser do too much work, man.
No, it was in the case of CS2.
Okay, CSS2, yeah, you have to have an image. Anyone else? Is there any other funky way? Why 1 pixel?
Yeah, of course, the size of the pixels will be more very less when you compare to whole image.
Yeah,
only one image. It make only one request to the HTTP server, and we'll get the only one image, and it will render it.
What if you want to do it for multiple elements, different gradients? How do you do that? You use multiple images. And we all know that using images like that is bad because it will only slow down your website. Do you agree? So CSS3 presents an awesome way to apply gradients. And this works in browsers today, by the way. So yeah, here, this is where I put in the plug. Forgive me for shamelessly showing my website over and over again from this point onwards. Because I started learning this by creating a website for myself. I thought, what is the best way to learn? Well, rewrite my website as HTML5. And that's where I came up with all this. So this is my website, and the background that you see here, this is a gradient. The background that you see here, that is a gradient. And all that is done without images. And that's the advantage of using gradients. What I can do is, yeah, about the transition also. So if you look at the top, those are the kind of transitions that I'm talking about. So I know it all looks like I have force fit my website to show you the CSS3 properties, but yeah, that's the reality. That's how bad a designer I am. So gradients. And how do gradients really work? There's this very good website called colorzilla.com, and this lets you create gradients on the fly. So for example, let me just preload a gradient. So imagine that I want this kind of a gradient. I click here, it gives me the code. And interestingly, this works on Firefox, IE, Firefox, Chrome, Opera, and IE. So IE has this very classic property called filter, which is very powerful because filter can let you do translations, transformations, just like CSS3. And if you use this code, this part of the code here, you'll be able to achieve gradients on your website. So what it means is, though we are talking about HTML5, though Jace told us that it's going to be 2 years down the lane. Okay, Harish said it. Yeah, so though it is like 2 years down the lane and all, well, you can start using it in your websites right away. So here's my website, and let me imagine that I have an older browser that doesn't support these. Okay, this I have IE9, I don't have IE8. So IE8 doesn't support it. The best way to do away with it is this part where it says that I just have a background color. This part where it says that I just have a background color. So the advantage is all the people who can see the gradient as in this color. Everyone else sees a green color gradient. So the rendering is progressive. It's not like stopped for people with older browsers. And that's why I would encourage you to go ahead and take a look at the CSS gradients. Any questions on this? This is pretty simple to configure. You can add stop points at different places. And as you add stop points, all these there'll be stop points added everywhere in the code here. So I just added one more stop point, and the stop point gets added here. I would suggest don't go ahead and try writing this with your hand unless you are like that super cool guy who writes standards. If you want to use it in your browser, just pick it up from here. There's nothing wrong in copy pasting. There's nothing embarrassing about copy pasting. Agreed? You're copy pasting with attribution. That's the only difference. So that was about gradients. It's 1 o'clock, so let me quickly go through transforms. What is this? Yeah, this is a very simple transform done using CSS3. Let me reduce the size. Yeah, there you can see this thing. So look at that rocket launching. Now that's done in CSS3. 0 jQuery animation. I don't deserve those claps. I picked it up from these guys. So copy pasting with attribution. Why are people so intent on looking at a rocket flying, man? Come on. Okay, here you go. Comes back to Earth. I do a on hover. And it flies. Okay, so the internally what happens here? I mean, yeah, fun apart. Internally what happens here? All it does is rotate the image. So remember I showed you the animations. What is the single line that you had to use for an animation? Transition? Can't hear you, shout. I know lunch is your fuel, but transition? Yeah, transition hyphen property tells you which property you have to transition. So effectively what you're doing here is moving the left and the top. And you use the transforms that I showed you to rotate. So this is how you transform. You say translate 80 pixel, 80 pixel, which will translate it around, and I want to rotate it. So if I just put this class in, it will do the transformation and rotation and show it. But if I put it as a transition property, it will animate it for me. So that's where transition and transform come together. Am I clear? Confusing? Okay. There are two things. Animation done by transformations, and then there is, so effectively, let me go back to that slide. Yeah. So you have this transition property. So what it does is, it's like setting up the stage for your great drama. It's like setting up the stage it's like NASA preparing for that rocket launch. So you say that in that specific div, I'll have a transition property so what will you transition there? You could either transition the background image, or you could transition it from left to right, or put a border around it, or whatever. And what is the duration? The duration should be 3 seconds. That's the transition setup that you do. And on hover of this, I set up this class. So what I do here is I say, whatever div this is, pick the div up, translate it by 80 pixel, 80 pixel, and rotate it by, scale it by that angle and rotate it by that angle. When I say that, the hover is applied with the transition duration that I gave, which was 3 seconds. And that is why the rocket does not destroy the space-time continuum and end up here. Instead, it gradually moves. So in a way, the transition is like the guardian of the space-time continuum. Okay. Any questions? No, that is not a canvas. The background is an image. This is a data URA encoded rocket image. It's a GIF with data encoded. So effectively, it's a alpha enabled GIF. Shadows. This is the second most important thing in CSS3. Forget rounded corners. What you need is shadows for everything. Well, yes. So I didn't write it down here, but give me a minute. So the transition duration that you see, right? That's what I had defined earlier in the div. So I haven't shown you the entire code, but the slides are hosted, so you can actually go around, dig around slides and find it out. So it's pretty well explained in the original article from where I copy pasted an attribute.
What is the browser support for?
So Firefox doesn't support it, unfortunately. So if you open this in Firefox, space-time continuum will break and the rocket will be in one position at one time. Hover over it, it will go to the other position without animation. So yeah, so it's that bad on Firefox. Yes, it is bad on IE also. Works perfectly on Chrome. Yeah, WebKit browsers work, and I think the Firefox 4 is coming up with it. So the one that I'm talking about is Firefox 3.5. 3.5 does not support transitions yet. So IE9 right now doesn't support transitions. I'm not aware whether IE9 will support transitions going forward. IE9. The question was IE9. IE9 is not WebKit. It's Trident, right? Okay, so why do transitions even come into place? Why do people like transitions? Yeah, shameless plug to my browser web page. Wow, when I did this, I was impressed. Garage doors for all my projects. I mean, yeah, I know I plugged it in and I know it's like force fit into this, but this is one place where I use transitions. This is not jQuery, jQuery animation, just transitions. Okay, shadows. Imagine that you wanted to create an arrow effect like this. What would be the best choice that you'll use today? How would you go about doing it? Designers, developers, open to all question. You want a arrow, you know what an arrow effect is, right? It's like that glassy effect. You want it on a web page. Not sure if internet will work, but this is what Shwetank had showed. Yeah, this one. Oh, it is not. Good. So this is the arrow effect that you want to work. So look at this. It's like translucent with the text there blurring in the background. If you want an arrow effect like this, the Windows arrow effect, or the Genome arrow effect, of course, how would you go ahead doing it today?
We could go for a PNG image.
Awesome. That's a very good answer. You would go for a PNG image. Any other creative ideas? A PNG alpha opacity image. Anything else? So yeah, so PNG won't give you blur. That's one big problem with PNG. But anyway, today, if you have to achieve something like this, you would go for a PNG effect. Well, the other way out is using the combination of opacity and shadow. So how would you? What is a simple box shadow? This is how the simple box shadow looks like. You say offset from left, offset from bottom, and you say what is the width of the shadow. So this is 3 pixel, this is 3 pixel, this is 5 pixel width, 5 pixel width with blurring, and then what is the color of the background. That's as simple as how you create box shadows. That is true for text shadows also. This is how you would write the text shadow. I don't know whether you're able to see the shadow here, but there is a blurring around the W. Can you see it? Can you see it? Yeah, so that's the same effect. Okay, now the question comes to, how do you get an effect like this, or like this, or like this? Now all these are very simple to achieve if you play around with gradients and shadows. So for an arrow image like this, all I have done is change the gradient such that there's one color till here, there's the other color till here, and the bottom has the third color, 3 color gradient. Change the opacity and added a shadow to it. It's one single div with a gradient property, the gradient background that I showed you. Yes. So let me go down here. So imagine that I take this. So if you see this has so many stops, right? So every single stop here is represented as a stop here. So I can have like multiple stops. So I use that. Do you want to see the rocket again? Oh, there you go. I keep doing, when I was writing these slides, every time I used to pass through that slide, I'd see the rocket animate once. It feels good. I mean, this is not rocket science. Who says this is not rocket science? So yeah, so that's how these gradients have been written. This does not have a very big shadow. It just has the gradients. So the difference between this and this is the border radius. So I've tried to fit in everything that I've told you into that arrow box till now. So there's box shadow, there's this gradient, and there's the border radius. Any questions so far? Do the designers like it? Are the designers excited to see stuff like this? Okay, so rendering questions. Certain browsers, okay, so before that, even before going there, a very basic question. Have you ever seen a dashed, imagine that you have a div, you have a very thick border for the div, and the border style is something like dashed 10 pixel blue. How do they look same on Firefox, Chrome, and IE? No, they don't, because Firefox makes the dashes circles. Makes it dots towards the corners. So the problem there is, yes, in Chrome, this the box radius does not show the border radius does not show the box shadows. It is an issue. So you'll have to so what you'll have to do is you'll have to have two shadows, one that shows here, the other one that shows here. And yes, you can write two shadows by just saying 3 pixel, 0 gray. That will make it two shadows. So you can, if you include two shadows, you'll have one at the top, one at the bottom. You can achieve the effect that you want. And by the question, he apparently seems to be a developer because he's worried about that single pixel of accuracy. Anyone else encountered that single pixel of accuracy? This pixel is not here, so the website doesn't work. Anyone encountered that? Box shadow? No, you can't. So effectively, remember that the box shadow is this one, is here or at the top. When you say minus, you can't go inside this box, right? I'm not able to get your question. Okay, yep. So, however, that property again is not a CSS3 approved property. It requires the WebKit. So, it's not the box shadow, the WebKit box shadow thingy. Yeah, that's the reason why I'm commenting about achieving it using gradient. However, there's again a problem with gradient because it can either be linear, vertical, or radial. It cannot be both horizontal and vertical. So yes, there is a problem with that. Sure. Sorry. So canvas is a HTML. So the question was between gradients, box shadows for div versus canvas, which one is recommended? The answer, I think, would depend on what you want to do with your website. For an example, if you want a div and you want it to look like this, so effectively it's more like, okay, let me put it this way. If you have a div, you just want to style that div using CSS. The easiest way to start is the gradient and box shadows. But as your requirements grow more complex and you want to really draw stuff, that's when I would suggest you. So gradients can be achieved as far as I know, gradients can be achieved in 3 ways. First one is the WebKit gradient. Second one, inside the canvas, how do you achieve a gradient? You have an API, right? Canvas tag. So okay, so there's the canvas tag, which I think I'm not sure whether there's a presentation on multimedia, but yeah. So you will have a demo on canvas tag where you can achieve gradient there. The third way to achieve gradient is using SVG tags. So you can use all the 3. Depends on what you want to do. If you're looking at it as just a div, because remember. I think it's supported on IE9. Not sure. SVG is supported on. Yeah, the other 2 by default, yes. So it depends on what you want to do. If you want to keep it a div and not really have too much fancy stuff onto it, you can go ahead with. I would suggest you go ahead with the web gradient thing. However, if you want to give it a little more funky stuff, you want to do SVG kind of styling, have a div and have an SVG inside. And if you want to draw stuff, the best way is to go ahead is Canvas. It's just about the amount of code that you write. Div is the least, Canvas is the maximum. Any questions? Okay, here's my favorite part, media queries. Before I go at it, anyone wants to take a stab at what media queries are? I'm sure a lot of people would have used media queries. Yeah, there is one.
Like, depending on if it's a mobile device or a web page, your screen, monitor screen, this query will hit accordingly.
Perfect. So the answer was, media queries render CSS rules depending on what your screen resolution is. It's not only screen resolution, it can also be touch device versus print device, etc. So there are like a lot of properties that you can use. One of them is, one of them is the min width, the width and height of, or your screen resolution. So why would you use it? You would use it to make your website, make your single website look good both on browsers and on the mobile phones. You just want to use one website and they look good on both. How many of you here have seen the doctype HTML5 website on mobile? How does it look? Looks good. Did you know that there's a specific media query style sheet that gets applied? That is the one that removes all the unnecessary fluff and makes the site look good. So media queries are very simple. All you do, so if you take an example here, all you do here is that whenever the minimum width is 480 pixel, maximum width is 800 pixel, apply these rules. And these rules are nothing more than maybe shrink the containers or reduce the font size or whatever. So that's effectively what media queries is. The advantage here is, let me show you my website and what I did. So I was able to lay hands on my wife's mobile phone for some time, and this is how my website looks on a normal screen. However, when I reduce the size, the media query kicks in. So I said that anything less than 800 pixels, show this. The primary reason was I wanted my website to look like this when you look at it in the browser. So in the mobile phones. So here is my website in contrast. So this is how it looks like normally. It has like a lot of content, but because I'll go to the mobile's resolution, it hides contents. Remember, it hides. It does not download. The download still happens. However, I hide content and I just show enough content that people are able to browse. So here, this is like a portrait orientation where people will look at list sort of a thing, and that's why the 4 items are shown as lists. On the browser, this is how they look like. So all I've done is changed my CSS, and the very same website works on the mobile browsers and the desktop browsers. Any questions?
Layout concept, is it not confusing, especially?
So I would say that CSS is more to do with presentation rather than styling or layout only. So when you say presentation, it involves both. Look at the tags look at HTML tags. They are semantic tags. The idea there is to give structure to content. So you have 3 parts: content, this is for presentation, and the JavaScript is controller. So the moment you say presentation, I think it includes, so in my opinion, it includes layout and styling. And that's what I have played around with. All I've done is, yes, the styling changes, but apart from that, I've also changed the layout. And that's what CSS3 gives me. Fair answer?
Developers' mindset standpoint, because till now layout was actually handled by HTML tags.
I would suggest that I would actually go one step ahead and say that don't do layouts using HTML. So to give you a classic example, newspaper columns. Newspaper are always in columns, right? CSS, okay, I shouldn't have said off screen. I think put a lot of people off, but how many of you here have heard about the famous jQuery library? Yeah, now a lot of more hands went up, so yeah. So the best part about jQuery is the query selectors. And that's what you have in CSS3 also. So these are some selectors that are already there in CSS2. CSS3 has effectively added a couple of more selectors. So I think the selectors there are self-explanatory. So the href wikipedia.org, this is picked up from Shwetang's slide, and I think It says that it gives you typically things like pick this CSS and apply the rules if it has this URL, or pick it if it's the first child, pick it if it's the last child. How many of you here do that even, odd, even, color even rows differently, odd rows differently? That is not too many people. How do you lay out a table? Tell me, is table a good thing or not? No unanimous answers. Anyone, can you please shout out? Is table good or not? Table is good, yes. Table is good in some point. Tables are good to show tabular data. Yes? And that's where you have this even odd kind of a thing. And that's where all these come into play. You can have you can select the nth child, you can select the even child, you can select the odd child and show them in different layouts. And that's how you do selection. This is effectively merging with the way jQuery does selection, and this is a good thing for you. So as developers, as CSS3 writers, CSS selectors can come in very handy. 2 more slides. This is a bunch of content that I did not know where else to put, frankly. So the first point is about newspaper columns that I was talking about. So this will not work on IE, this will not work on Opera. It will work on WebKit and Mozilla browsers. And what you can say is lay it out as 2 columns. Lay out my lorem ipsum as 3 columns. Stuff like that. That's how that's where the first one is. Bing for or Google for column gap, and you will know more information about it. I don't want to go into details and overload you with information. So because this is still in proposal state, I would suggest you go ahead and look at it. The second one is one of my favorites, the calc property. So how many of you have ever run into this problem where the margin is 25%, the border is 3 pixels, and you want the rest of the space for the content? Have you run into that? How do you solve it? Server side. Yeah, that's the best place to solve it. What I do is I do the jQuery offset and position. And doing layouts in jQuery sucks. I mean, that's not the place you should do it. Mozilla proposed this very, very interesting calc method. It says, so today you can't do a 25% minus 1 EM, right? Because the browser doesn't know what a 25% is. So that's where the Mozilla calc comes, where it lets you play around with these percentages and EMs and pixels and stuff like that, and still style your content. So this is awesome for layout. And this is one specific layout enhancement that Mozilla is proposing in CSS. Okay. How many people here still believe that IE9 is bad? Fine. So I would encourage you guys to go ahead and use it, not because I work for the company, but because I've actually interacted with the team and I know how much effort they've put into making it standards compliant. So at all said and done, at the end of the day, if IE doesn't support anything, it has this very powerful concept called filters. The concept is so powerful that you can actually do image manipulation like blurring. You can apply Photoshop kind of effects in IE using filters. Well, you shouldn't be doing that because that's not standard, but I would suggest you take a look at the IE filters, specifically in cases where your translation and rotation do not work, which means you can start using all these not tomorrow but today. SVG background images. What are the different background image formats that you could use? A div, how many background images can a div have? 1, good. That was the old days. Today it can have any number of background images as possible. Doesn't work on all browsers yet, again, another proposal, but it doesn't stop with that. It allows you, was there a question? So the point there I'm trying to illustrate is that background images can also be SVG now. You know what SVG is? What is the advantage of SVG? It lets you scale primarily, and that's where when you have fluid layouts like 25%, a background SVG image is very useful. The final point that I'd like to make is the RGBA color scheme and the HSLA color scheme. The A part is important. All gradients can now have opacity, and opacity is a big thing in CSS3. My final slide, this is just, so the slide, if you notice, in the starting it said CSS3 and presentation. I had spoken about CSS3. I thought I should do some justice to the presentation part and maybe just list down all the things that I learned from creating that website and when I started learning CSS3. So CSS3 is not definitely going back to the 1990s. Yes, you can do blinks. Yes, you can do marquees, but you don't really have to do it. That's one major thing that I learned, because when I started writing my website, I wanted to put everything in. I wanted it to animate, I wanted it to do a lot of stuff, and it ended up looking like a GeoCities page. How many of you here had GeoCities pages? Good. If you want to go back to that era, yeah, CSS3 is the way to go. But I would suggest that you can always do the better, hire a designer. That's the best part. Use fonts very carefully. Remember that the entire font is downloaded. It will slow down your website. So whenever you're using fonts, defer load them or load them very, very carefully or include them in your app cache manifest. You know what an app cache manifest is, right? You're going to talk on, no, I think I'll defer it to the expert. So app cache manifest lets you save files locally. That's a very bad explanation, but yeah, that's pretty much it. It lets you control your cache. So ensure that your fonts are always cached. Opacity can lead to performance hits. This is very true. I know it feels awesome to create arrow effects all over the place and animate them. But remember that every time you create an opacity, all browsers, regardless of which browser it is, has to spend that extra cycle to calculate opacity. It's the same story with the alpha PNGs. So be very careful on that. Similarly, excessive transformation costs rendering cycles. Today I launched that rocket. That rocket was very inexpensive. It was just one translation. But imagine me having to do that over and over again for a lot of objects. That's going to be expensive because remember that now you do not have control over it. When you did it in JavaScript, you could control the execution, right? You can say start animation, stop animation. In CSS, you can't. So you're effectively screwing up the rendering cycle of the browser. And that is something you will have to guard against. Vendor prefixes, yes, it is the best to use it today because not every browser in the world is created equal. Yet you can, though you cannot have same pages, you can have similar pages, and vendor prefixes are the way to go. And one final word on modularity. Whenever you're writing your CSS, it's very, very easy to have plenty of classes, and I've seen people whose CSS pages are longer than the total amount of data that they have in their database. So it's that, sometimes it gets that bad. So I would suggest you guard against modularity. Use these tools like SaaS or Mixins where you can modularize your CSS and have better control over it. So that's for the presentation part. I am done with my presentation, but I would be very happy to take any questions that you may have. And yeah, this is the final animation. Yeah. So I'll be happy to take any questions. I think I have 1 minute. Would love to hear your thoughts on what you think about CSS. Can you start using it? What it means to you? What was that? Yeah, General Keshav had a very, very good point. Hire a designer. He can actually do good stuff for you using this. What about the designers in the room? Designers in the room? Is this job opportunity for you? Okay. Any other questions? Maybe people are hungry, so it's like this time and then. Yeah, so I'm sure there's going to be a breakout session, and then there's also going to be an unpanel at the end, right? Yeah. So you can ask me your questions. I'll be hanging around. Apart from that, if you still have questions, if you want your website specific questions, please do walk out to me and I'll be more than happy to help you out. Thank you, folks.